Hello again. Since the COVID business, vaccination has been something of a controversial topic in this country. There was a fuss before that, of course, due to a supposed connection between the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine and a rise in numbers of children with autism. These fears centred around the triple vaccine, which includes measles, and a number of parents, in an effort to play it safe, did not allow their children to receive this vaccine. This is still something of a thing in some areas, and it has been associated with the rise in cases of measles. I think that part of the problem is that with the passing years, fewer and fewer people remain who actually remember epidemics of childhood diseases and the awful consequences which resulted from them. In 1947, the year after the birth of the first baby boomer, an epidemic of polio swept Britain. There were 8,000 cases that year, resulting in the death of many children and the crippling of a very large number of those who survived the illness. As late as 1960, there were 80 deaths in Britain from polio, and many children were left with varying degrees of disability, ranging from slight limps to being permanently confined to wheelchairs. Throughout the 1950s, tens of thousands of children in Britain caught polio. More than 90% of them survived, but many suffered varying degrees of paralysis, hence the old name for the illness, infantile paralysis. This could cause limps and wasted muscles. The sight of children with their legs in metal calipers at that time was not an uncommon one. Far worse, though, was when the muscles most affected were those in the chest, which allow us to breathe. In such a case, a child could literally suffocate. Terrible death. Developments in the 1930s had saved countless lives when the respiratory system was paralysed in this way, but this saving of lives came with its own cost. In the 1920s and 1930s, artificial respirators were developed, which mimicked the effect of the chest muscles which enable us to breathe. The pressure within the iron lung was alternately lowered and raised, which caused the lungs to expand and then shrink again. In this way, a victim of polio, whose muscles were paralysed, could be kept breathing indefinitely. The obvious disadvantage was that the patient had to be altogether enclosed in what amounted to a metal coffin, with only the head protruding from the apparatus. During the polio epidemics of the 1940s and 1950s, entire hospital wards were crammed with iron lungs, each containing a helpless child. There were over 1,000 iron lungs in use in this country. For some, only a week or two would be needed in the contraption. For others, months or years were needed before their own muscles could take over the function of the electric bellows, which constantly pumped air in and out of the machine. Until that time, they were compelled to lie helplessly on their backs, quite unable even to feed themselves. It was the vaccine for poliomyelitis which ended this dreadful state of affairs. What about measles, though? Surely that was a mild enough illness, more a nuisance than a mortal hazard. During the measles epidemic of 1961, although 750,000 cases were recorded in Britain, only 150 children died in the outbreak. This doesn't tell the full story, though. Apart from those who died, many more were left with brain damage or rendered deaf. Even if it were the case that there was a link between the MMR vaccine and autism, and there almost certainly is not, then the number of children liable to develop signs of autism would be dwarfed by those who became deaf or suffered from brain damage as a result of contracting the disease itself. It's worth remembering that opposition to vaccines is nothing new in Britain. The National Anti-Vaccination League flourished here in the late 19th and early 20th century. Their concern was, of course, the smallpox vaccine, and they were determined not to let their children be vaccinated against smallpox. There was actually a legal requirement for parents in this country right up to the creation of the National Health Service after the end of the Second World War to have their children vaccinated. It was against the law not to let your children have the smallpox vaccine. I'm about to say that I think it's good that diseases such as smallpox, polio, and measles should be eradicated from Britain by means of vaccination. The new vaccines designed to protect against COVID are rather different, using as they do mRNA, and I can see why these make people a little uneasy. Their mode of operation is very different from traditional vaccines, such as those against the diseases of which I've been speaking. They're rather in a different category entirely.